It's time, friends. John Harris, me, Drew Dougherty. This is Texans in the Lab. This is a real hardcore in the lab. When we started this, I think in 2017, 2018, this podcast,
Wow.
we would get dorky. We would get granular. We'd get down and we'd get kind of fantastical. Is it fantasy? We get fantasy landish.
Yeah. That's pretty good. That's good. We'll go with that.
Meaning, one time we ping pong back and forth and drafted an all-time NFL roster, but you could only take one player from a franchise. So you couldn't have Earl Campbell and Warren Moon.
Bruce Matthews. Yeah, Bruce Matthews. Yeah.
One of those,
Yeah. Yep.
I'll go back. You took Earl Campbell, so I couldn't take him. Bruce Matthews. But hey, man, from the Browns, I got Jim Brown. So
yep.
From the Bears, I got Walter Payton.
Pretty good.
I took Darrelle Revis. So, there was.
I remember with the Bengals, I took Anthony Munoz because there was really nobody else to take.
Yeah. So after him, I went with their corner that just got in, Riley.
Ken Riley.
Ken Riley just got in. So he's a fine corner. But yeah, that was a fun one. So dig through those podcasts and look that one up. So today, though, John.
Okay.
2024 Texans are pretty salty. We're excited about them. Are they perfect? No. Have they won any games yet? No. But as they're constructed right now in June, who from a professional Houston football team who is retired, so no current players or no players that work in Houston that are ping-ponging around the league, a retired Houston professional football player. So it could be a gambler. It could be an Oiler. It could be a former Texan. Which two former Houston professionals would you want to add to this team? I get to go first. I'm taking Earl Campbell. Busted. Ooh.
Oh, wow. Didn't even give me a chance to breathe.
Not even giving you a chance. So you got to, and I'm putting you on the defensive here, but it's kind of obvious. I mean, hey, Joe Mixon, you're a really good back, and there are intriguing things ahead for you. Damian Pierce, same deal. How about you, Jawar Jordan? How about you, Daria Gumbawale?
Yeah, let's go.
Love all of you. You're not getting kicked off the island. You're merely adding maybe the greatest professional football player in the history of Houston sports.
No, that's a good question. Yeah.
He's up there with Dream. He's remarkable. But Earl Campbell makes this 2024 Texans team. He makes any Texans team for that matter. He makes any Oilers team for that matter. Of course, the Gamblers too. But I'm adding Earl Campbell because, man, CJ gets a whole lot better with that guy toting the rock, catching some screens. People forget. Dan Pastorini told the story on the radio, and I'm sure he's told it a bunch of times. It's because it's one of the stories that needs to be told a bunch of times. One of the first plays that Earl Campbell ever had, it was at Atlanta, and he takes a pass and goes 80 yards for a touchdown.
Yep.
It's pretty cool. It's on YouTube. Check that out. But give me Earl Campbell in this offense. Give me Earl Campbell in any offense, but especially in this offense. I kind of think Bobby Slowick and the boys could draw some good plays up that would feature Earl Campbell. And you could run him 30 times a game if you want, but you don't need to in this offense, John.
Yep.
Man, what he would add, what he would bring, the dimensions, the layers upon layers upon layers. Earl Campbell would look pretty darn nice with CJ and Stephon and Tank and Nico and Dalton and the rest. I'm leaving guys out. What do you think? You like that?
Now, I do. I think that Earl Campbell would probably face something similar to what Damian Pierce did last year, having to learn how to run in a zone scheme.
I think he'd be able to handle it.
I think Earl Campbell will be okay.
Yeah.
So, and obviously we're talking about different eras. Zone blocking really wasn't I remember it was my senior year in high school. It was 1989. And I remember our coaches installing zone blocking. I thought at that point I'd moved to receiver. And I was like, man, thank God I don't understand the zone blocking stuff. But we started running that zone stuff. And I was like, whoa. And we just basically took our plays that we ran and we just incorporated zone blocking in it. And so it wasn't a part of football when Earl was playing. And that's going to make the decision for my first player. I don't want to say surprising, but it's a specific fit. And he's a friend of ours. But I agree with the Earl Campbell. I mean, Earl Campbell, Joe Mixon, my goodness.
Yeah.
Good luck.
When you're that excellent at something, you're going to be able to adapt, and the coaches are going to be able to adapt some things for you to make you flourish. And these guys, I think, will be able to do that. So
absolutely.
Our friend.
So here we go. It's a friend of ours. If I were to ask you just point blank, Drew,
a friend of ours,
what's
a friend of us, like Tony Soprano,
the biggest gap or biggest hole that this team has offensively, just right off the bat, what is it?
Biggest hole offensively.
The biggest question mark that we're just unsure about.
Maybe left guard?
That's exactly right. And that's why I am going with our buddy, Wade Smith.
All right.
For a number of reasons. Number one, now, again, there are changes by eras throughout eras and how you do things. This offense is very similar. But one of the things that you cannot do that you used to be able to do, and actually Wade was very, very good at this, was to cut guys on the backside. He was so agile and so good that he could just chop guys down on the back end. And that allowed Arian Foster a lot of cut-up runs back behind his center, back behind Wade. When runs that would go right, they would come back left behind what Wade was doing. But there's so much to Wade. He's very good in his zone scheme. I think Wade is one heck of a leader. I think he'd have the absolute right demeanor to help Juice Scruggs next to him, to be able to work with Laramie Tunsil. I think Wade Smith would fit the zone scheme. I think he would fit this locker room. I would go with Wade Smith all day, every day. He jumps right in at left guard where he was very comfortable, where he turned into a Pro Bowler or became a Pro Bowler while he was here with the Texans. I mean, yeah, a little bit undersized, but he never – you wouldn't watch a game and go, oh, he's getting his butt kicked because he's too small. I mean, Wade never got his butt kicked. And he would tell you he wasn't as heavy as some other guys, but that dude had great technique. He was quick and agile. He was a tremendous athlete, and he was a leader in the locker room without being this, pound my chest sort of guy. He was just very, he was very quick to pull guys aside and tell them this is the way we do it. And I would love his demeanor on this offensive line and on this offense in general. I think there are a lot of guys, we've seen them. They've got some fire. And Wade's got fire, but he just has it and channels it in a little bit different way. So I'm going with Wade Smith right off the bat. So we've added Earl Campbell and Wade Smith to this offense. So my gosh, look out.
Yeah, smart guy, Wade Smith, who had been around the block, had some experience. Yep. Like you talk about that fire, originally a tight end in high school. And
yeah, exactly.
Memphis, they moved him to tackle, and then he moved further inside once he got to the NFL. He played and started games at tackle well before he got here. Good choice there. Now, since I was a big jerk and took Earl Campbell right off the bat, didn't let you have a say. We'll do Snake in this one, so you can go again.
Oh, I get to go.
Yeah, we've added Earl Campbell. We've added a running back. We've added an offensive lineman. We can stay on offense, but you're only getting to add 2 total. So you can keep going offense if you'd like, but who else? Professional football player from the city of, or played for a city of Houston team. Who would you add to this current 24 squad?
Well, I feel like there's an obvious answer, and I don't know if I'm going to.
I wonder if your obvious matches with my obvious.
Well, I'm going to take 99.
Okay, that wasn't the obvious one that I had, but that is, that could always be a good one.
There's a part of me that doesn't want to say it because maybe he doesn't stay retired. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to kick over that fire ant mound again, like it got kicked over back in February and March when everybody's like, oh, he's coming back. And then D'Amico's got to answer questions and JJ's on podcast answering questions. And, it stirs everything up. I don't know that I really truly want to do that. But my thought process went like this. When you said, go ahead and Snake, I was like,
you're going best player available in this one. Yeah.
Well, my first thought was, okay, I'm not totally sure just yet what this defensive interior on a 3-down basis is going to look like. And I say that, but I think that Fatukasi and Settle are going to be better than people think. That's my assessment. But I feel like if you were to put JJ in that group and just let him play the 3 technique and let him play in this defense where he can just penetrate and get upfield, that's what he did anyways when he was playing inside. Now, I know there were times JJ was like, oh, I don't really want to play inside. And I didn't blame him because there were, 2.5 blockers responsible for him on almost every play. And that's a pain physically and mentally to kind of deal with all the time. And so he wanted to be on the outside where he could use his as you call it, his jungle cat skills to get one-on-one against to get against offensive tackles or even tight ends in some cases. And so I know he didn't want to play in there permanently, but I think in this defense, even with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, those 2 guys actually can go bounce inside if you need them to. There are a lot of different combinations that you could throw, but imagine a pass rush that's got Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson on the outside and Danico Autry and JJ Watt on the inside. I mean, in all honesty, those are all 4 guys that you would say if they were on 4 separate teams, who are you going to double this week? Well, we're going to double Will. No, we're going to double Danielle. No, we're going to double Watt, and we're going to double Autry. Those would be guys that you'd want to double or chip on if they're outside. You might, as the Patriots did against JJ, you would send your running back not to the outside to help with your tackles, but wherever JJ is, that running back is going to go help. Well, if you do that against this pass rush, all of a sudden, there's Danico one-on-one against the guard, which he can win with quickness and strength. And then you've got your 2 edge guys that can win. So I'm not totally sure that I want JJ every single play playing inside, but I do feel like having him gives me the opportunity. If I get 30 plays out of JJ in a game and he's getting some inside, he plays across from Settle on some plays, he plays across from Fatukasi on others. Maybe there's an opportunity for he and Khalil Davis to be out there together with the guys you have on the outside. There's a lot of different things you can do with JJ because of that flexibility and that versatility. And it's funny because versatility kind of became this word in the mid 2010s that people hated hearing because it oftentimes got stamped on the guys that would line up at different positions but weren't very good at any of them. Well, JJ lined up at every position on the defensive line. He was dominant at all of them. And so I'm going to go with
he's all pro and 12 and 14.
Yeah, he was the all pro at 2 different positions.
Defensive end. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. So I'm going to go with 99. And the scary thing in some sense is that maybe it happens. I mean, I'll put it at about a 3% chance, I guess, but I don't know. I was watching JJ's soccer highlights the other day, Drew, and he was playing in some TST 7-on-7 tournament. And it was kind of comical, but yet JJ was the best athlete on the field. He looked amazing. I mean, the things he was doing in soccer, diving headers. I mean, he just incredible.
Yeah.
So, if he decides to come back at some point and all those guys are healthy, what I just outlined, those 4 pass rushers being on the field would be like a dream for Texans fans in some respects. All right, you finish it up. What's your final one?
One last thought on JJ there. I did the Dear Drew videos for a few years there from like 14 to 19-ish, 20-ish. And a lot of times it could be a question, hey, do you think JJ could catch another touchdown pass this season? Hey, do you think JJ will break this sack record this season? Hey, do you think JJ is going to win Defensive Player of the Year? Hey, do you think JJ is going to come back from injury this year? It didn't matter what the question was, but it got to a point where I was like, I'm not going to bet against that guy.
Right. Exactly.
Doing anything.
Exactly.
I think anything's possible with him.
It's a great point.
That goes here. Now, for people who are watching and their ears might have gone up when you made your first selection and you went with Wade Smith and they said, well, if you're going to go with Wade Smith, why don't you just go with Bruce Matthews? The guy was a Pro Bowler at all 5. How come, he's he's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I understand you went kind of line specific with this squad, right?
And that's exactly right.
Matthews.
That's why I did it. Yeah.
Okay. It's tough to pass him up because we saw injuries all over the offense last year. And hey, you want to have him in the mix because you could shuffle him around. He would start on this team. He'd start over anybody on this team.
That's correct.
And you can move him there. So it's hard for me to pass him up. Yet we haven't picked anybody in the secondary. And there's a Pro Football Hall of Famer who in 14 years, he had 60 takeaways. He had 21 fumble recoveries in his career. He had 49 interceptions in his career. And 9 of those 49, he took to the house for a touchdown. He also took back a fumble recovery for a score. So he scored 10 touchdowns on defense. And he returned a punt for a score in 1974. We're talking about Ken Houston. Now, different times, yes, but simply for his impact and who he was, his playmaking ability, I got to put him back there. And no, we're not shoving anybody. No, Jimmy Ward nobody's getting cut, but they're in the mix with those guys. I'm going to add a Pro Football Hall of Famer to the back end of the defense. You added a Pro Football Hall of Famer to the front end. JJ's going in Canton whenever it's all over.
That's correct.
I'm going to add one guy at the very back. He played for the Oilers in the 60s and early 70s, and then played on a very fine Washington squad for a good chunk of the 1970s. So give me Ken Houston. And when I started here with the Texans in 2009, I saw Ken Houston around the team quite a bit. He was a Texans ambassador. Now it's called the Texans Legends Program, and that's an NFL-wide thing. Everyone in the NFL, it's mandated by the league. If you played for a team, you are a legend for that team. If you played in one game, if you played in one snap for a game, or if you're like J.J. Watt and you're one of the best in franchise, it doesn't matter. You're a legend for that team. So he was in that ambassador program, which kind of is the precursor to the Legends program that we have now. Saw him at a lot of community events, saw him here at games, talked with him, interacted with him. He's a fascinating dude. He's one of the best to do it. He did it a long time ago. So the further you get away from some guy's playing career, the less the younger generation knows about him. But this guy, just think about it, 60 takeaways in his career. 49 interceptions. Who's the all-time leader in interceptions for the Texans? Think about that.
Oh,
Jonathan Joseph.
Jonathan Joseph, yeah.
You know what the number is? He didn't even get to 20. That's how good. Think about how great Jonathan Joseph was for a decade.
Yeah.
He had 49 in his career. Now, J-Joe had some picks with the Bengals. And he around 30 all-time, but still, he's basically got 20 more than your next best there. So
I gave J-Joe some consideration for sure.
I absolutely gave it. It came down to Earl, Ken Houston. Those are my two choices. But I also thought Bruce Matthews and J-Joe were my other. And also, if you were going to take them, I was going to go, okay, maybe how about Chris Dishman, former Oilers corner? He was pretty good. So, yeah.
Here's why I stopped with going with J-Joe and went with JJ instead. And I'm not basing everything on OTAs or mini camp. I felt this way about him. I mean, I had an early 40s grade on Kamari Lassiter, and I really liked him as a player. I loved him into last year. I thought he had a good year this year. I actually thought 2022 was probably maybe a little bit better, to be honest. I thought he was a really good player, but in OTAs and minicamp, it feels like watching Kamari Lassiter. We're watching, boy, this is the next guy. This is the next star. Like, he is really, really good. Now, he's going to get his comeuppance because teams are not going to want to throw at Derek Stingley. But I felt like with the rise of Lassiter, okay, I think maybe there's more help needed up front, especially in the interior, than maybe in the secondary, especially if Kamari is ready to take that step. And look, we haven't even seen Jeff Okudah, CJ Henderson in full in preseason games to be able to see what those guys are going to be able to do. But I walked out of OTAs and minicamp feeling a little bit better about what the secondary makeup is and how they might move some guys around. And I feel like over the 3 weeks of practice that we were able to see, that Lassiter might have been the most, I say improved, but the most impressive player that we saw. So my question to you is, because Ken Houston played them all, what position are you going to play? You're going to play him at safety? You're going to now back in the 70s, you didn't have a nickel. You didn't play nickel for the most part.
Yeah, he was listed as a strong safety. If you look at his stats,
yeah,
I think he was probably good enough to play both safety spots if you needed him to.
Yeah.
maybe
He
fill in.
can play corner. I mean, I think corner he could possibly play.
But I'd
There are a lot
probably
of different
play Ken
options.
Houston. I'd probably play Ken Houston back though. You know, have him
Yeah,
as a safety. You know,
I think
patrol that back.
that's exactly right. His smarts, his range, and ball making, ball skills. I mean, playmaking skills. I mean, those are the things you want in that back end. Whether you're playing, middle, you're playing too high, you're playing single high, middle field close or open. I think he's that kind of guy that's going to be able to make plays. Plus, if you're a safety in the 70s, essentially, you were a bad mother. You know what?
Yeah.
You would hit. You physical. And Ken Houston was all of that. He was never afraid to mix it up. So I think we walked out of there with some good ones. Now, I know there will be people going, okay, you mentioned a couple of them that you had. There will be a few people going, hey. The first Hall of Famer in Texans history is Andre Johnson. Well,
Totally. Yeah.
I mean, I know people are going to ask that, but I mean, we might have the strongest wide receiver core in the league right now. So let's try and fill maybe some other, gaps on the squad. But I know that would possibly come up. Even at receiver, the one that I thought about, and I just had a brief thought because I heard his name a few times last week on a podcast. But then we already have kind of a flyer and Tank Dell, but I thought about Will Fuller, a healthy Will Fuller, just because he could take the top off at any point of a game. And even if you planned for it, you still weren't fast enough or good enough in the back end to take away those deep shots. So I gave Will Fuller some consideration, but with only two guys that we were adding, I was like, nah, I can't do that.
If you're gonna consider Will Fuller, you got to consider Drew Hill, Haywood Reese,
yes,
and Ernest Givens. Just those guys were really, and Ken Burrow before them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no doubt. There's no doubt. There's so many receivers that from the city of Houston over the years. I mean, obviously DeAndre Hopkins is still playing.
Yeah.
Andre Johnson. With the Texans, those are the guys that mark their careers, and hopefully Tank and Nico are on their way, and who knows what happens with Steph. Maybe those guys make their mark with the Texans as well as those guys did, but. Man, there have been some receivers that have come through this town. That's for sure.
No doubt. Well, hey, man, it was good talking with you. It's fun.
Yeah, man.
We just did the Texans a lot better. We just added 3 Hall of Famers and a Pro Bowl offensive lineman to the mix.
Yeah.
Run game's getting better, and the defense has some more teeth. So, yeah, it was a good time. John, good to be with you, my friend. We'll see you again.
Yeah, man.